All right, so this is going to be pretty off the cuff. I wanted to share a few ideas that I've been sort of tying together in my head. I'll probably put some graphics and photos in over this afterwards, but for now, I just want to kind of fly through the ideas, tie them together, and uh, you know, share them for you to consider. So I will say that this might come off as kind of doomer, but that's all right. I think there's still some hope and uh, different types of ways that hopefully I'll be able to explain and share in this. So I think, the first thing I've been thinking about is that we are stuck in a bad plan. I have this image in my mind, that pale blue dot image that Carl Sagan talks about, the speck of dust in a sunbeam. And for one, I just really love that image. I think it's such a great perspective setting image for humanity, to see everything as connected, as together. Everything that happens on that dot is happening to us, has happened to us, and will happen to us. And so whatever's going on there affects everybody. And one of my good friends likes to say that he never wants to be a part of a bad plan. And it's kind of a joke, but it's also, very wise that when there's a bad plan, we should probably talk about it, get aware of it, and try to see if we can either change it or opt out. I'm not sure if either option is possible in this case necessarily, but it's still worth talking and discussing if we want to have any hope of, adapting or moving forward. But yeah, that pale blue dot image, you think about it, it's like everything's in those few pixels. And the current plan on those few pixels is infinite growth. It's infinite shareholder value. It's infinite resources. It's infinite profit, infinite innovation in tech for everyone. And when you see it on a little speck like that, you realize that, well, that's finite and that just doesn't work. I really think we need some sort of realization. I love that show, The Good Place. And if you've watched it, you know that spot where Eleanor finally realizes that this is the bad place, that they've been deceived, they've been going through all the motions, and then they realize that, they're in a bad plan, this is the bad place, and they are stuck. Now in that show, they get reset and they have to go through it over again, and she keeps realizing it, and that's really hilarious and funny. Here, we have the opportunity to realize we're stuck in a bad plan and what to do about it and where to go from there. For me, I remember going to college and learning, more about climate change, about sustainability. I'm a millennial. I'm a kid of the 90s. Definitely grew up learning about those things, but it didn't really sink in. I went into the career field. I'm a creative. I'm a designer. Really, every goal, every metric of what I do is tied towards growth. It's tied towards, more views, more clicks, more purchases, more subscriptions, more members, more shareholder value. That's really the end game of what makes that stuff valuable. It's not art, it's functional. It's meant to grow and to build things. So yeah, it's been kind of an interesting realization to realize that even in a creative field, my whole career has been bent towards growth. So that kind of paints the picture of we're all doing this. Obviously, all of culture is bent towards how do I get ahead? How do I grow? And that's put us into a weird spot, a predicament where we're in this state called overshoot. So there's this professor, William Rees, I believe he's out of Canada. I've watched a few interviews with him on different podcasts, and he does a really good job of explaining this concept. Really, it's pretty simple when you get down to it, but it's we're living beyond our means. Let's see, I'll probably put a graphic in here, but the idea with the overshoot is that we've really just gone too far. Earth has the ability to support the biosphere and certain populations of different animals. We've slowly evolved over time to reach these balances, and we've broken out of that balance. Basically, the fuel that we found in the ground that allowed for the growth of the entire modern society has meant that we've expanded and built a society that's living way beyond our means. This other visual I have in my head is that every year now we're burning and using more of the resources and more of the absorption capacity of Earth for pollutants and heat and those things than we have on a sort of a yearly budget. And so there's a couple organizations that work on this, and one has estimated that our current use of Earth is basically 1.75 Earths per year. So by, I think it was August, we've already used up what would be typically allotted in a year for, a sustainable system of Earth. That doesn't even bring into account the usage of fossil fuels, but that's just, biosphere type stuff. Another really fascinating thing I've been learning about is planetary boundaries. I think it's the Potsdam Institute has released several different studies, and one more recently showing that we've crossed 6 of 9 of their planetary boundaries that they've defined. That's everything from pollution to species loss to land use to the amount of CO2 and radiative forcing. So that's like basically warming and heating. Yeah, and 6 of 9 of their boundaries have been crossed currently, some way more than others. And I'll try and link to a presentation in the notes that you can check out later. And then really probably the other visual I would use to sort of sum up the situation is one that's pretty compelling, and that is this idea of the carbon pulse. Nate Hagens talks about it on his great Simplification podcast a lot. This idea radically changed my perspective. It seems super obvious, and you see it and you're baffled as to why we're not thinking about this on the daily. But anyway, the carbon pulse, I'll put an image up of it here too. It's this idea that, we've broken into this miracle fuel that we found, and society has skyrocketed in its use of energy. Everything from coal to steam to oil to gas, all of that has built what we have here. I'm of the mind that humanity has always been intelligent, has always had a capacity for genius, and so I don't think we're particularly special in this time with our innovation. Previous generations of humans were innovative with what they had, and I think we were just being innovative with the rocket fuel we found in the ground for our society. And so when you look at this chart of the carbon pulse, it goes up in energy use, and then once all the efficient sources of energy are found, it gets more expensive to get new energy, and those energy resources deplete. And so you'll have a big bump up and then a bump down. And it's really hard to tell right now where we are in that arc. I mean, when you zoom out, it just looks like a giant blip. So you get a few thousand years out, you got a steep up, steep down. So for us, it's like, okay, at what decade is the peak? Have we passed it? Is it coming up? It seems like there's back and forth on when that is. Some people say that 2018 might have been peak oil. So that's like when it's the cheapest to extract out of the ground and the cheapest the energy is. But we don't know for sure. I mean, we found shale, and that sort of punted what cheap oil might go to. All of the fracking, that sort of thing, basically bought us extra time. So we could see over the next couple decades here, next century, us going down the opposite side of that carbon pulse. And so what are the effects of that? Probably not a multi-continent supply chain. Energy in general will get more expensive. Even the cost to flip to something like renewables will be dependent on that. And so we probably see a lot of geopolitical moves, stress in the current system that we're expecting. So I would say, this time in human history, it isn't that humans are special or any different necessarily than in the past. It's just we've been able to leverage the fuels that we found in the ground to kind of give us a rocket ship to the future. One thing that Nate points out, which is kind of insane to think about, is that, fossil fuels and oil give us the equivalent of about 400 billion extra workers on top of the 5 billion workers that we have as actual humans. And so given that and the carbon pulse, when we hit the other side of it, that's really the loss of those 400 billion extra workers. So given all that, how are we going to respond? How are we responding right now? As a millennial, I grew up with all sorts of different shows. I remember Captain Planet and the Magic School Bus, who, if you've seen the meme, it seems like the kids are the same from both shows. But anyway, in Captain Planet, they had these elemental magic rings that helped them solve these ecological problems, and they could summon, this hero character to come and solve it. That's not going to happen, of course. And then in Magic School Bus, they could always solve the problems, using their ingenuity and creativity and cleverness. But they also had a Magic School Bus helping them in Miss Frizzle. So I don't think that's going to be there either. So in reality, we have to find solutions to respond to these things, to these crises. And it seems like there's basically two main buckets. The first one is renewables and electrification of everything. This one's interesting because in reality, we are creating cleaner sources of energy, of electricity. And I think we should continue pursuing that, of course. I don't think it's a bad thing to get better efficiency, to get energy from sources that aren't polluting. But we should be clear-eyed about it. Like mining lithium batteries is incredibly energy intensive and polluting. Also, these systems don't last forever. And so at another point, we're going to have to replace them. So they may buy us time. They may give us more efficiency. But in reality, they are still ultimately supporting a paradigm of growth and energy consumption that is still feeding the idea of overshoot. So we should probably embrace those ideas, but with a giant grain of salt of what are these things actually doing for us? Do we need to explore technologies that are better overall, but also change what we're doing as a society to depend less on energy in general? And then let's see, the second category I've been thinking about is AI. This basically seems like the new messiah, the new savior tech. Basically every problem humanity has, we're throwing in the AI bucket and saying it will solve it. Now, I'm definitely of the mind that AI will probably help solve many things, and it's kind of unreal and amazing the things we've seen it do already. As a creative, I'm a little bit pissed about the fact that it's trying to take so many of the creative tasks from us instead of doing, the menial things or the more meaningful things, like solving health problems and stuff like that. But that's another video. But I think really the problem with AI is it's a giant bet. We don't know that it's going to solve the problems yet. We don't know that it's going to make us hyper efficient or find a new fuel source that'll be clean or anything like that. And in the meantime, AI is super energy hungry. You have all these tech companies, striving to build new power plants, revive old ones, all in support of this new super intelligent supposed organism that's going to solve all their problems. And so is that a wise use of all our energy? I don't really feel like we have a say in it. It's going to happen anyway. But that's where a lot of the energy will go. And so another thing to keep in mind with this is that any efficiency we seem to gain usually turns into more energy use. They call that the rebound effect or Jevons paradox. So the idea being if AI makes a bunch of innovations on how to make solar more efficient or some new form of energy creation, we're still going to use as much fossil fuels as we can cheaply get until we can't get them anymore. So it doesn't really tamp down our energy use. It just gives us new sources of energy to pull from. So what's next? This is an interesting one, and this is really just more my personal take. This is going to seem like a tangent, but one of my favorite songs of all time is from a band called NOFX, and it's a song called The Decline. They actually released it as its own EP because it's 18 minutes long. And in it, Fat Mike basically goes through all of his observations and critiques about the world back in 1998. And looking back at that, listening to it again recently, he was spot on so many things. But I think the part of it that's relevant to this video and the part that I think encapsulates where we're at and how we're thinking is a line near the end of the song where he sings, he's got his and I've got mine, meet the decline. It's after he paints all these pictures of overconsumption and selfishness and things like that. But I think that sums it up. I don't think we're in a place in 2025 where we're going to change the model, where we're going to change the direction we're headed. And so for now, we're continuing down that bad plan. So that sounds pretty doomer. It sounds pretty hopeless. But at my heart, at my core, I'm an optimist. And I think part of the reason I want to do these videos is to get these ideas out there, to get people thinking about, hey, we are in a bad plan. What can we do about it? What are we going to do about it? If we can't do anything about it, how are we going to adapt? And so I think the hope really isn't in the world as we expected will be saved, that these solutions and responses we have will keep it going as is. I think any sort of hope or vision for the future we can find to work towards, to find value and purpose in, is going to be in adapting to this new world. It's going to be, bending and not breaking. And Nate Hagens and Daniel Schmachtenberger have this awesome series where they go through these ideas of, these changes are coming. A great simplification with less energy is coming. And the way we should navigate that is by trying to bend to the new paradigms and not letting ourselves just snap and break as a society, as communities. And so I hope to explore solutions or not solutions, really just responses, I guess, of what it looks like to bend, not break, even in an individual way. But that's the direction I hope to go here. So anyway, hope you learned something, and I'll be back soon with another video.